tell us a little bit about, what is a brain aneurysm and how did that happen?
Well, the first thing I want to respond to is the idea of those people who, and I'm one of them, who has on occasion felt like I am the sum result of catastrophe. And
Right.
I've got it in all these different categories. And they are events. And then you have also that other part of your brain that acknowledges I could, like any upstanding person, walk through life absolutely naked and know that in God's eyes I am his child. So what happened 31 years ago as it relates to overcoming something, something of a real physical trauma, something that carries a lot of uncertainty, like where it came from and why it happened, and is it possible that it should happen again, and what does it say about me and my health or my environment or any of those factors. So I'll tell you the story of what was happening in my life, and maybe you'll draw from that as a doctor, any number of things that will, prompt us forward. But I was probably about 36 years old, somewhere in that. I'm 65 right now, so this was 31 years ago. And at that time, I was married, joint family, so there were 5 kids, untold number of animals, birds, ferrets, dogs, lived in a 4,000 square foot house on a 3-acre little piece of land that looked like a park. And I had a life that was so fast paced. I had kids in private school and talking about room mom and working in television. So I worked a night shift, and we had, at that time, it was just before Christmas, Kathy's Coat for Kids. So we were collecting warm clothing for children and distributing them in different dry cleaners and grocery stores. So it was really all the Christmas shopping and decorating and parties and weird hours, all kinds of things going on. Dr. DeBrincat, I can tell you that for weeks I walked around asking people, what is a migraine? What is a migraine? Because I knew that there was something that I couldn't shake it, but I was moving too fast to even stop and think. I wasn't worried. I was just, irritated. And I would push my hand and so then, as it turned out, this big Saturday night event took place, and my husband and I drove down for this Christmas party. The people who were actually the sponsors of this Coats for Kids campaign had their party, and it was a swank operation. This was a huge investment firm, and people were just warm and friendly. But man, I'm telling you that this was like against the perfect blue sky and right there on the coast, and food galore. Everything was at the height. Walked in, and it just was so, moved by like a movie set.
Surreal.
But before they even served, I was like, okay, let's go. And I was home and in bed. And I can remember that what happened was, like in an instant, something happened in my head. And I was in awe. I wasn't afraid. But I knew, I was like, whew, it was super fast. And I could feel like just a film over water, just shoo, on both sides of my brain. The next thing I know, that I made it to the bathroom, and I was sitting on the toilet, and it was diarrhea, and it was vomiting, just crazy. And I thought, well, we're weathercaster, you talk about weather and related, flu seasons and all that. Well, no wonder we're making such a big deal of this flu. This is really bad. So it was 36 hours later.
Oh, my goodness.
Nobody knew. My kids marched in on Monday morning in their little uniforms. I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, Mom, we're going to school. I lost a day. And my husband said, I'm going to take the kids to school, and then I'm going to take you to the emergency room. I remember opening my sock drawer to take out a pair of socks. I saw the kids in their uniform, a flash, a picture. Opening the drawer, socks, a picture. Now I'm sitting on the edge of an exam table, and somebody's looking in my eyes, and they can see by looking in my eyes there's an open bleed. And they took me by an ambulance to St. Luke's Hospital, where I was for the next 11 days with an open bleed in my head. I had a basilar tip aneurysm. And they said that was a really difficult position because it's really underneath the brain. Mm-hmm. There was not a surgeon in the United States who had ever successfully operated with a good outcome. The doctor who had invented the process was a guy in Canada named Charles Drake. He invented something called a Drake clip. I don't know if that's a term that's ever used now, because this was, 30 years ago plus. And they had to get me out of that hospital. The nurses, I happened to have been married to a family with a private investigator who was world-renowned. They made movies about his Blood and Money. He was part of the Iran-Contra. I mean, he was in the midst of big things, and you didn't mess with him. First time I met him, he took his eye out, put it on the table, and left the room saying, "I'm keeping an eye on you."
Oh, my goodness.
He was a character. He never intimidated me, but man, you didn't want to challenge him, cross him, and don't get too curious because he'd take you down.
Right.
But they interrogated the nurses and found out that Houston, the medical center, world renowned for their medical care, they said there is no one in this city who can save her. If you want her to live, you've got to get her out of here. So they found the guy who had originated that system, and he had trained 2 doctors in the U.S. One was in Miami, the other one was in Dallas. Miami couldn't make it, and the Dallas guy wasn't going to leave. They had to life flight me to Dallas, but they couldn't have me at that altitude. So my father-in-law had a friend take everything out of a plane, put me and my mom in there, and get me to that hospital. They did the surgery where they pack your body in ice, and they have like a 4-hour window before all the vital organs, that you can actually work. So they did an incision from here all the way back. They drilled holes in my head. I can still feel them today. Mm-hmm. And they physically went in and lifted the brain. And they came out and they told my family, I have 5 brothers, and of course everybody was there. And they said, well, we were in 18 minutes too long, and we found a second aneurysm. And we didn't have time to address it, so we wrapped cotton around it to build up scar tissue. But she won't live, and if she did, she'll be permanently mentally impaired. She'd have to learn to walk and talk all over again.
Good Lord.
So my brothers, being the class act that we are, went to an inappropriate place and drank a lot, and then came back only after 7 hours to find that they came out and said, we don't know why, but she looks, expletive, great. I'm going to tell you what, there was a lot of prayer. I mean, that was 11 days in one hospital, and there were a lot of prayers. I had no idea what was going on. I would forget what I said at the beginning of a sentence, although I would sound very much normal. I didn't know what was going on. I literally would, by the time we got to the end of the sentence, I didn't even remember where I was going or what. So I obviously I survived, and I did go down the stairs on my fanny, and I did have surgeries on my eyes afterwards on this eye because the muscles that simultaneously move the eye was affected by scar tissue and so on. Mm-hmm. And it took a while for me to, if you see pictures of me with my head shaved and sitting and whatever, I looked and I hesitate to use the word, but I looked mentally impaired. I looked like a very special needs person. And like one of my kids is like this, in the picture, like, where's my mom? Yeah. I remember walking outside for the first time and like the neighbors watching, and I had no sense of social skills. I was like a 5-year-old. I didn't know how to respond to anything. Walking to the mailbox, I was so awkward. About 10 days maybe later, I was taken to a Rotary luncheon. And I had the good fortune of sitting to a man next to me who was probably in his 70s. And so here I am in my 30s. And he says, hey, did you have a near-death experience? Dang, I wanted one of those. He says, no, let me tell you something. You may have, and it'll come to you down the road. And I did have. Now, it's very subtle, and it's not anything anyone's going to tell a story about, but I did. And my near-death experience was that I saw my 3 children's faces in their birth order, Alicia, Brandon, Kristen, and 5 words, I have to go back. And that is what happened. And I came back, and the biggest thing I can tell you is short-term memory. I didn't have huge chunks of my life there. And I tried to describe this, and I've done it a few times, but it's like standing on the edge of the water. And this is exactly the way I can tell you it came to me. Like the moonlight is there, and I'm looking at the water, and I can see something kind of lapping in the water, and it's coming, and it's coming, and it's coming, and then I look down, and it's washed up to shore, and it's at my feet. And I pick it up, and I look at it, and I open it, and I'm turning the pages, and I get it. Okay, that chapter or volume of my life, and I know how to put it now into context of my life. It was picking up those chapters that I wouldn't have known they were missing until I found them or they came
Wow.
back to me, and I could rebuild my life. So it was an incredible thing. I went through that probably universal, why me? Why did I get to live? Why did I get to live? When I see, I mean, at that same time, the youngest child in the family had his best friend dying of a brain tumor, and here I have this, and I get to live. And I can say that that's probably the greatest gift in my life, is that I got to raise my children. I got to be a mother to my kids. And I can also say the only thing that I ever remember during that phase was saying to my mom and dad, if I can't be a mom, if I can't be a wife, take me home. I don't want my kids to go through that. So I'm blessed. I'm blessed.
Amen.
Yeah. You want to say something? Because you know what, I kind of just, just kind of, I think I commandeered the microphone.
No, that's absolutely okay. And that's, oh gosh, it's like I'm so moved by your experience and having near-death experience myself. Not only just feeling what you went through, but what your family goes through, seeing you have to go through that. And when you have an aneurysm, it means that one of the blood vessels ruptures, okay, and it breaks open. So it's no longer holding the blood in your vascular system where it's supposed to be. It starts leaking out into your brain. So you probably had a blockage in there of some sort, it was what I would guess. And the pressure got so great, you felt it in your head for a little bit.
Yeah.
You didn't quite identify it, like it wasn't like a vice grip around your head that makes you think, oh, I'm having a headache. This isn't what a headache feels like. It was just like something in there that wasn't right.
A dull pain.
But you sensed it. And then when you felt the whoosh, that was blood bursting out and then filling the back of your cavity of your brain.
Yes.
Now, I know we haven't taken you through your actual brain map yet, but when we do, you're going to see that your brain's divided up into 88 different Brodmann areas. And it's kind of like looking at a globe or a map where you can identify all the different states have borders. So you have a lot of little irregular puzzle pieces that make up the tissue of your brain. And each of those pieces have a very specific neurological function.
Does every brain have a same pattern, like a US? You'd identify the design and maps. Okay.
That exact
Wow. Okay.
That exact region of the brain might be the size of a dime right here, and that allows you to recognize shapes and objects. It allows you to be able to say the word that you're trying to say. Each one has a very specific neurological function. And so in the areas where we've had traumas, we see that those are the Brodmann areas that are usually the most dysregulated, which means neurologically they're either reprogrammed to function too high or too low, and they're not able to meet you where you need at the demand. And in those areas back here, this is all memory. It's visualization. It's pattern recognition. It's speed, accuracy, decision making. That's a lot of that connects the frontal part of your brain to the back part of your brain.